Let's see what we have to work with in the panel. Ah, an open circuit. I wouldn't exactly call this safe. We've got a 240 circuit, double wired up here to a circuit breaker, just sticking out with some electrical tape on that. I think you guys have pointed this out to me over the years, so we'll get that sorted out. I'll have to have Mrs. W. will file for electrical permit tomorrow. I have them come out and look at this, but I think I'll add a 220 amp, a double 20 amp breaker here, and we'll put both plugs on two separate 20 amp circuits. That way we don't have to worry about them blowing if we run a grinder on them or something. I'm going to take one of these breakers with me because I always get the wrong one. These are, what brand are these? And I've never, Challenger? Oh goodness, you can bet they're not going to have these. I probably just have to buy a new sub panel. I have some, but not all of what I need. I do have the studs. I've got the electrical conduit. I have all of the connectors. I have the 12-3 wire. I think that stuff pretty much. So here's our short list. We have to get the bottom plates. So grab a couple extra studs. We got to grab the ply, the junction boxes, and then the shelf brackets. And I think that will get us going. So let's. I guess we're heading to Home Depot. Welcome back, friends, to the shop. So as you see, I did start without you here. I wanted to get the sub panel in and the lights on so it wasn't so dark in here. We'll do the plugs together. So this is, doing the conduit's kind of fun. It's very simple to do. You can kind of lay everything out the way you want it. And the nice thing about it is that if you ever want to change anything, it's really accessible. Also, if you really do hard work on your shop and you're moving heavy things around, plastic boxes and wire can get damaged where the conduit protects it inside of a kind of an industrial application. So let me bring you up here close, show you what we did, and then we'll wrap it up together. Really, we haven't changed anything. We just have fixed, just made it cleaner and better. We're using all the same stuff. So this is a sub panel. A sub panel, if you don't know, there's a main breaker panel in your house. Usually it's a 200 amp service. And if you want to add stuff like to another part of your shop, it's common to do it like a secondary panel. What you have here is we've got two conduits here. This one right here brings the big heavy wire in from the main panel. That basically energizes this box. You see the red wire and the black wire. Those are two 120 circuits which make a 240 service, I guess a 240 option. Right here, this 20 amp breaker right here, it grabs a 120 there, it grabs a 120 there, and converts that into 240 so you can run your plasma torches or your small welders. My welder's rated for a 20 amp service, so that would be fine. You have a heavier wire. So that takes care of that side. Now over here, these are just double pole breakers. You can see that these are 15 amp, and these are the new one that we put in, which are a 20 amp. Which is what we're going to feed our plugs for. I like the 20 amp plugs because if you run stuff that's really heavy, or if there's a couple of you working in a shop and you're both running like heavy duty tools, grinders and such, you're less likely to have a problem. So that's kind of nice. And then this conduit right here, this is basically just coming from is feeding power to the switch and the lights. And that is on this 15 amp circuit, just like it was before. I can hear all my subscribers that are electricians right now going, just stop talking. I know, but I can't afford to hire. You guys cost too much to come out here. The last time I had a guy come out here, it was like $1,000 to do something that I could have done myself for $100. So, all right, yeah, I know, it was done right. There is that, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do for plugs. So what I do, and I don't know if this is the best way, it's just what I do is I mount my boxes. We're going to have 4, 8, 12 plugs. That's enough, right? We can keep bench grinders and different things plugged in. Should be enough for most shops. And so what we'll do is we'll put all these on a 20 amp circuit because I'm usually working here by myself, and we'll make up these plugs and then tie into this, and then we'll be I think we'll be all set to install our bench and then figure out if we're going to do some sort of a shelf, which would be kind of nice. I think I'm going to move the batteries, because you know, all of those battery chargers, it's nice to have them in one spot. I've got them kind of spread all over the place. So the charger for the big charger for the chainsaw, and I've unfortunately got Milwaukee, DeWalt, and Makita. And ultimately, it's better to have one that you can share all the batteries, but that's what I have now. So we'll have to we'll find a clever way to deal with that. And I centered these plugs on the, at the 2 foot in the center of the drywall. So my conduit, I didn't have a 4 foot piece left over, so I just spliced together some scraps I had. And of course, your box is going to have punch outs for multiple sizes of, I think these are called slugs. Is that what this called? That's what my dad used to call them. You can punch them out to whatever you need. And I'll just put, once I use a level to make sure that these are all the same, I'll just put one screw in and then I can turn it and then usually feed that back in there like that. And of course, these guys are just held on with these little nuts. I'll just put those on there like that, and I won't tighten everything up until I get it all the wire ran. I like to have all these screws all facing the same way so they look nice. I'll show you how I make up my plugs here. For tools wise, you'd only need a few things. Regular and Phillips screwdriver, razor knife, pair of Bill knows electricians type of pliers, and then one of these guys, stripping tool. I don't know what these are called. This is your bread and butter right there for sure. So we're going to be 20 amps. So this is what is this? A 12-3 wire. I think if memory serves, I just kind of cut this to the length of the pliers. Seems to be pretty good. And then we'll strip down the center, strip away the cover there, the shielding, whatever it is, and that's going to expose 3 wires. So when you hear the number 12-3, that's a 12's the size of the wire, and then the 3 is that there are 3 wires in here. You can get a 12-4 or 12-2, different things like that. Now we're going to strip both ends of these guys here. So these are notched in there for different sizes there, and so we'll strip that back, all 4 of those. And you can go ahead and make these all up ahead of time. You'll need 2 or 1, a pair, 2 for each pair of plugs. Like that. Now, of course, let's see. I can't use those push-in things anymore. Everyone goes crazy when I do that. They say that's not the best practice, so I better strip some more. Now, I think if I've been told right, we got to put a bend in these, right? There's some holes in the ends of these. If you insert your wire, you can make that nice little, probably could have stripped that a little bit further. Make those guys in there. If you have a helper or you have a son or daughter helping you, or your wife, this is a good project for him or her to do. Make those like that. Okay, so then black is always going to go to the gold. We have a gold on there, and then we have that's kind of gold, that's silver. Yeah, usually that's pretty well standard. How I remember it, black is, of course, in the U.S. is your power, your source. How I remember it is just black gold. Black goes to gold, and then you can put those on there. Also, when you put these on there, make sure you put them on that way, orient them the way that I did there. That way, when you tighten this, it will act to tighten it, to make that little loop we made even tighter versus looser, right? And then we're going to go over here. We're just basically connecting these two together, right? Let's see. That's how we did that, yeah. Electricity is simple. Well, those have little keepers on there. Again, you probably shouldn't be watching me do this as a tutorial. Take it for what it's worth. You get what you pay for. So that's what we're doing right there. We're basically going to connect those two together just like that. Now we can run our wire in our conduit. Now we just need to measure our wire for this. So you want that to stick out a few inches so you got enough to work with. But don't get too crazy. The wire's expensive, so you don't want to waste it. and we know the distance between our boxes is the same, so we can go ahead just and cut them both the same while we have it laid out here. As a former construction superintendent, I can tell you I went round and round with electricians and their messes on my job sites. They, for some reason, and not to, I hope they don't mean to hurt any feelings here, but electricians, if you don't know, they can be prima donnas. Not all, but some of them, and they think that these prima donnas think that because they have a certificate or they're a journeyman that they're above cleaning up after themselves. Well, I never saw it that way, and so they would come to the job sites, of course, and when you know they'd leave their stuff all over the ground, as I said, for someone else to clean up. And so I would call the shop and say, "You need to send someone out here to pick up after these guys. They left their stuff all over the ground and didn't take any effort to clean up." And they were always shocked, like no one had ever asked them to come do that before. And rarely would they would just kind of blow me off. And then I would gently call back and say if they would like to be paid for the job in full, then they would need to come and clean up their mess. And if that was a problem, I would hire one of my guys to do it and then take it out of what was owed to them. That usually did the trick. They would come almost immediately. And we just went black to black and white to white. It's not super complicated. Now our ground, of course we've hooked our grounds together. Our ground can be connected with these little wire or these little copper ferrules. It seems to be the cheapest and easiest way. What I'll just typically do is, I'm all tangled here, is slide those over there, and then you can mash them down right there, and they will come off. So I'll bend that tail around and squish it all together like that so they can't come off. And then just kind of fold these wires so they just kind of fold up on their own and they go back in. And then we can take our cordless drill there and just make sure nothing came loose, and we can go ahead and install those. All right, guys, that's it. Should we give it the smoke and spark test? Well, that's a good sign. First, we'll check the 240. 240. 120. 120. 120. And we are good. We can button it up. How much better is that? There's very few things in life that give me more pleasure and joy and satisfaction than putting something right, isn't it? Even if it's just a small thing, to do something right, to undo what what some guy has done and not done right, and to do it right, it's great. I would imagine God feels the same way when he takes us, right? Takes us when we are going down the wrong path and changes us and starts knocking those bad habits off, and ultimately we are convinced to come correct. It's got to be a tremendous pleasure to him as well. We don't think about his pleasure very often, do we? We spend a whole lot of time thinking about ours. Maybe that's where we go wrong. All right, Mrs. W just told me breakfast is ready. I'm going to go in, and it probably wraps up today's video. We will, next part, we'll get the bench mounted back up, and then we'll start thinking about the layout and how we're going to do the chargers, and maybe put up a cool shelf, maybe a little detail But that's going to be so nice. It's going to be so much more pleasurable to work out here. Just the light refracting off of that wood is so much nicer than that crummy old sheet metal. Well, we'll see you guys on the next part.